I'm talking to you about our package of research within National Centre for Research Methods, which is about, in part, the pedagogical content knowledge of research methods teachers. And I just want to introduce you, first of all, to this concept of pedagogical content knowledge if you don't know it, because I think it's really critical to what we're all talking about today. So I'm going to explain to you what it is, why it matters, how we're researching it at the moment, and what use you might have of it, what you can do with it, this concept, and how it might be useful to you. So let me just talk you through this pedagogical content knowledge. And I'll do it by comparing two different teachers, if you like. I'm a methods teacher, but I come to this having been a teacher in a school for 12 years, having done teacher training. And so I bring to my task of methods teaching a whole load of theoretical knowledge, pedagogic knowledge, principles, philosophy, psychology type knowledge around this practice of teaching, professional knowledge around teaching. So I'm bringing that to bear as a methods teacher. But I did one of those PhDs in the old days where you had no training whatsoever in research methods. So I happen to be an expert in, if I can remember even how to say it, multiple time series designs across subjects, something like that. I can't even remember it now. But I learned one method and I know it really well. But I didn't learn those other methods. So what I brought to my methods teaching experience was an imbalance. I brought a whole load of pedagogic knowledge, but much less content knowledge, because I didn't know the content knowledge is the knowledge of the methods themselves. So while I was teaching methods, I was relying really heavily on my ability to structure a session, my ability to hold an audience, my ability to develop some interactive activities. And my methods knowledge, my content knowledge was being built up the more research projects I was doing and the more I was teaching and the more I was doing stuff. Contrast that with, I suspect, some of you in the room will come to methods teaching having done lots and lots of work as a researcher. You know, we have methods teachers in NCRM who've worked as government statisticians and, you know, developing and designing surveys for 20 years. And what they bring is this huge amount of methods content knowledge, but their pedagogic knowledge has to catch up with that. So when they're faced with methods learners, there's like, I know all these things I want to tell you, but I don't necessarily know how to organise a module or a class or an assessment. So these things are often out of sync. But what comes in the intersection of this content knowledge and the pedagogic knowledge is this pedagogic content knowledge. And what this is, we'll skip that one for a minute, is where the content knowledge and the pedagogic knowledge come together. It's what we know about how to teach this specific thing. And this is what the whole day is about, you bringing your pedagogic content knowledge and sharing it with other people. Because it's no good just having some general pedagogic knowledge, and it's no good just knowing methods. It's got to be the intersection of the two. The sorts of things John was talking about. How do we get over the hump? You know, those things is where we've got this very specific knowledge. But the trouble with our pedagogic content knowledge is that it's quite tacit knowledge often. You know, with the teacher training and stuff, mine is a bit more knowable to me because I've got some of the language and the concepts to deal with it. But even Schulman, who introduced this whole idea of pedagogic content knowledge, said that one of the difficulties is that teachers don't know it. They don't recognise it in themselves. They can't articulate it for you so that you can easily pass it on to somebody else. So our research project, if you like, is teasing out and trying to understand what pedagogic knowledge people like yourselves actually have and use. So that was just in case anybody's uncomfortable with the word pedagogy. I know some people do. but if you think of it for now, and it's helpful, what people do in teaching and learning situations, but also what they perceive to be meaningful, important and relevant. It's not just what we do, but what we believe and understand. So pedagogy is more than just the doing. And my argument to you is that PCK matters because it's what we do to translate our knowledge of methods and communicate it to others. But if we've got insufficient, either side, pedagogic knowledge or content knowledge, then our pedagogic content knowledge automatically becomes quite hazy, grainy, indistinct. We can't know it for ourselves, and we're hampered if we don't know it for ourselves, because it's harder then to develop it. It's harder to reflect on it. If we make something known to ourselves, something a bit more explicit, it's there for us to manoeuvre and develop. So this is kind of our research, which is a 3-year project in a kind of nutshell. It's multidimensional, it's got all these different components. So we've been interviewing a panel of experts. They probably wouldn't like that word, experts, but we consider them experts. Experts in both research methods and the teaching of research methods, who should have good pedagogic content knowledge, but might not necessarily be able to put it on a plate for you in an interview. So this builds on earlier work, and we've got some of our national experts who we interviewed in the pre-study in the room. We've got Richard Rogers, who was one of our international experts in the room, but really trying to say, what do these very experienced or very immersed people know? So that gets at some of this knowledge. But our video-stimulated recall, reflection, dialogue method actually gets at pedagogical knowledge in a different way. So what we've been doing is taking the video camera, having it on the teacher and the learners for a day of training of research methods, doing some, Sarah does this, swift editing and stuff, and moving the cameras around, and then having a focus group at the end of that day with teachers and learners, and actually being able to say, what was going on there? What was that moment all about? At that moment, it seemed to be critical. That was when you got over the hump, or that was when you lost them, or what's going on. And so we would suggest some moments from the day, and then we'd invite teachers and learners to say, pick a moment, let's talk about it. And this is about the micro, the minutiae of what we know. But it's really important that we don't just talk about research methods in the abstract, that we actually talk about what happened there, rather than what we wish we did or think we did. So that's a really interesting part of our project. We also have a longitudinal component in which a really sweet and supportive bunch of learners are keeping a methods diary circle of all of the kinds of, they're keeping a diary of the kinds of resources they use, the training days they go on, the things they learn on the job, if you like, or as part of what they're doing. They keep that diary in an online blog, so they're seeing each other's, and we come together once a year in a focus group. But this is really getting this kind of learner perspective on what's useful. And then next year we're going to be doing some in-depth case studies to try and get a more holistic notion. So I'm just going to share with you today 2 aspects of pedagogic content knowledge that we're working with so far. There's loads more, but it's just to give you a flavour. One is about pedagogic hooks. What methods teachers know, which is essential to their craft, is how to hook those learners in, how to connect them to data, to connect them to evidence, to make them think like researchers. So we've got lots of interesting data about the kind of hands-on tasks that you do, the exercises, the metaphors, they've come out very strongly, the various metaphors people use. The way people take their learners behind the scenes into their research projects, to the bits they never see ordinarily. Learners love that. What went wrong? You know, how did you do that? And it's this thing about hooking them, connecting the learners. Paul Votts, one of our expert panel, talked a lot about non-threatening, non-technical kind of hooks that he would use, turning quant methods into a non-technical language, if you like. These were some of our experts. So there's a lot about that stage, but of course we don't stop at our hooking them in, we have to do stuff with them. But another really strong strand of our data is around the pedagogic content knowledge that you and others have around using data. We're really beginning to understand how you teach with, through and about data. So there's, we've got some quotes here. Sorry, Malcolm. I didn't know you were going to be here when I put that up there. That's you. How you teach through, with or about data. Flying time. This notion of you can't keep people away from their data. You've got to give them flying time with data. Anne Porter talked about this thing, and I'm sure the quants teachers here will recognise this. I want to work with real data, but not too real. I want it to be clean, but not too clean. I thought that captured, in a sense, pedagogic content knowledge, because, she's getting at something there. I haven't got time to go through all of this. Johnny Saldana, that was interesting, talking about his methods classroom as a research studio, where we're enacting data, we're talking data, and through talking it, sort of embodying it. So, once we're beginning to identify and talk about and talk with authority about pedagogic content knowledge, what do we do with it? The reason we want it is that we want to build the pedagogic culture around research methods. Several people have identified this lack of culture. There aren't textbooks to go to about how you teach research methods. There's zillions of methods textbooks, but not about how you teach it. We occasionally write things. We write articles about how I teach my class. But it doesn't go beyond that class, and there's not much cross-citation going on, so we're not building this body of shared knowledge. So our idea is, if we can make this pedagogic content knowledge more explicit, then it's more open to sharing and therefore to developing and building this whole kind of pedagogic culture, so that our response to the ESRC isn't just, yes, we'll put on more and more and more and more training, but actually we'll do our training smarter and better and more pedagogically nuanced in the way we go about it. So we've got our project website there. There's loads of resources and things there that you should refer to. So that's me. Phew. Have I got time for questions or not? Yeah? Oh, it's funny, I'm chattering myself now. Did that resonate, or have you got questions? Yes.
Yeah, I just wondered, when the students did the learning log, the diary, why did you decide to have it open so they could see each other's reflections or whatever? Do you think that would affect it, or more honest?
No, it wasn't about honesty, it's about building the culture. Right. And it was the same decision around with the video stimulated recall and the focus group afterwards. Several people said to us, if you just get the teachers together, they'll say much more. If you just get the learners without the teachers, they'll tell you. And the way I've positioned the whole thing is I want this to be a dialogue between teachers and learners and learners and learners and teachers and teachers. None of us are passing judgment on anyone else. And I wanted them to be able to say, yeah, I recognise that. So it's almost like you've got cross-citation going on within the method circle. But it does mean that you're not just scribbling in a private notebook, which does change the nature of the data.
Really like the method you're using, videoing people rather than actually teaching. I think that minute kind of level of picking up the ideas from the student, or the lack of ideas from the student, and reacting is something which can really be built upon. But I wonder if, going back to John's point, if there's something to be said about looking at it at a very large scale, curriculum design issues, and the whole idea of kind of the build-up of knowledge and understanding, that kind of method. I mean, is that something you're building as well?
We haven't built that in, and it's things that come out later. I mean, there's only so much you can do. And the other thing that we've not built in that comes a lot from the data is just all the kind of instrumental constraints on methods teaching. So we're often wanting our teachers to talk about, you know, the issues, and they talk about the issue is that I'm scheduled for 3:30 on a Monday in this room and that isn't suitable, and it's like, oh, that's not, you know, but I think what I initially forgot was how much all of that stuff impinges. But I think your point is fair around the broad picture as well.